Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Today, I am doing very good.
Yeah, it's a good day. Yeah. It's been a good Saturday so far?
It has been.
Why has it been such a good Saturday, Will?
Well, we've kind of just put together some finishing touches on our coffee blend.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's made. It's sitting here right beside us.
Yeah, it's a little sneak peek action to our guest today. He gets the first look at it.
Yeah,
looks good, gents.
Yes,
real good.
we're pumped, guys. Hopefully, soon enough, we'll roll it out to all the people, and you guys can all enjoy a nice cup of the original blend while you listen to the PT Coffee Cast.
You know what the funniest part about all of this is that we're actually drinking cold brew right now, workshop cold brew. And it's freezing in Canada. Why are we drinking this? But
I did the same thing yesterday.
It doesn't faze us.
Nothing phases you guys. It's just like, you know what? The coffee's going to happen. That's what it is. If It's cold, cool.
So let's bring in that beautiful voice. So today on the podcast, we're doing an interview with Josh Walters. He's a physical therapist out of the Oregon area. He's also a weightlifting coach. He's also a personal trainer, putting out content on Instagram, business owner, and just an all-around good dude. So Josh, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, gents. I've been it's cool. I've been following you guys for a little bit. I loved your motivational content last year. And, there were some days where I had some tough patients where it kind of helped pick me up as well. Nice. So this is awesome. I'm super pumped and honored to be here with you guys, chatting over some coffee.
Yeah, let's talk about the coffee first. So, what coffee are you drinking? How do you brew your coffee? And I want you to talk a little bit about your mug because I know you're a big weightlifter, and it'll be good for the weightlifting community, I'm sure.
For sure. So I am kind of basic when it comes to the coffee brewing setup. We have a Ninja coffee brewer, so I'm kind of old school. We have it just does its normal drip coffee. Today is the Sisters blend. I can't remember which version of the Sisters blend we have. We have a couple of them. We try a bunch of different coffee grounds just throughout, so we've got quite the wide collection right now. Nice. Over on you can kind of see the coffee wall is for real.
Hanging up there in the back, man.
Got the mugs hanging in the back.
Mug game strong.
Yes, you can I thank the wife for that one. The funny story about the mug wall is we made the distinction that we cannot buy any more coffee mugs until we put this together because we had so many, they didn't fit in the cabinet, they were just spread out everywhere. So coffee and coffee mugs are a big deal in our house.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, go ahead. Tell them about the cup.
So the cup is from Strong Supply, which some of the weightlifting community will know. I hope more of them get to know them. This is a very important flow chart that we have here on the coffee mug. This is the power or nah flow chart. We're just going to zoom in on that. Power or nah. So for those who play the power or nah game, you do a power snatch or a power clean, and you catch it above your knee crease, hip crease above knee crease, it counts. But if there's some other things where it's a little sketchy, you can ask yourself these questions. Were you alone? Yes or no? Were any of the people that were there, were they your friends? Was it a PR? Or is it your birthday? If those things kind of flow together, you could probably call it a power, If not, or not.
I think Dalton's going to need one of those because I've been watching him doing a couple lifts, and I'm not sure.
Skeptical? Are we a little skeptical, gents?
Maybe a little bit. But all those things always align for me, so it's definitely power.
Always. Good. For the longest time, just due to some of my own training history and training injuries, I've essentially done nothing but power versions of the lifts just because of flexibility problems. So it's never a question. So yeah. It's fine.
It's always yes.
It's always yes.
Let's dive into a little bit about you, Josh. Why don't you kind of give a little background on yourself and let the people know?
For sure. So I am, I guess, technically considered still a new grad. Probably will always be a new grad forever and ever. Amen. I'm originally from Texas. I went to school in Austin at University of St. Augustine, and I did my undergrad work at Abilene Christian. It's a little, I say little, but like spread out West Texas town. So I've been a Texas kid for my entire life until at that time my fiance. We decided that, we wanted to try something new. So the stipulations were a place with 4 seasons and a little bit of snow. So we ended up in Oregon. I work full-time for Samaritan Health Services. They are a local community hospital system here in the Valley, in the Mid-Valley area. So I work in the Sweet Home Clinic, which is a tiny, tiny little logging town in the middle of nowhere. But I love this community. It's given me a couple awesome opportunities to kind of share my passion with strength training and sports and performance and youth athlete development, and kind of give to a community that needs people who want to take care of them. So it's been a cool journey.
I think that leads pretty easily into our next question about, obviously you're passionate about like Olympic weightlifting, strength and conditioning, those sorts of things, and coaching. So, how have those things influenced your life?
It's funny. I've been in a gym of some sort probably since middle school. In Texas, football is king. So if you sign up for middle school football, you're learning the basics, squat, bench, deadlifts, maybe some incline press, things like that. So I've always enjoyed a heavy barbell. I was very fortunate to be involved with some really good CrossFit gyms at the time where like CrossFit was at its biggest peak, and learned from some pretty smart brains about program design, about learning intensity. And it always just kind of had some interest to me. So I've trained with a few powerlifters, a couple bodybuilders over the years. And then as I kind of finished up my CrossFit career, I guess you could say that, I wasn't all that good. So the career consisted of, I don't like being upside down. I'm really too heavy to do a lot of these muscle ups. I'm just going to stick to a heavy barbell. That's what it is. By that point, I had met a couple local coaches who just did weightlifting, and I just fell in love with the sport. I think it's a beautiful sport when you really kind of learn the technique of the lifts and the mentality of it. It's taught me a lot as a person as well as a clinician. So the barbell doesn't lie in my world. That's one of my favorite phrases.
No, that's for sure. Definitely doesn't lie. So I know, so you're currently working, like you're saying you're working in, what was the name of the place? Sorry.
Sweet Home, Oregon.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you work out of a clinic there, or?
Yes. So I have a full-time in Sweet Home. So that's my 40-hour-a-week job. The Human Movement is my side project. I have office space in partnership with Hub City CrossFit here in my hometown in Albany. So on the weekends or the occasional evenings, if I have people who reach out and want to have some sports PT, a lot of them are from the CrossFit community, but also just people who it's a cash pay practice. So they're like, this happened, recently. I've had some people tell me in the past that I should, stop doing the things that I love. I like to be the alternative. Like, let's talk about the approach. Let's give you some options on how to be more active and continue doing what you want to do and do it well.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing that? Like doing that side hustle for?
That's been since we got the name in August of 2017, and then we went live September of 2017.
Nice. Go, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm curious, like when you were talking a little bit about just weightlifting and stuff like that, you mentioned that it's influenced you as a person. So I'm curious to hear, how that has influenced you as a person.
Yeah. Weightlifting is an interesting sport. It's technically a team sport because you can earn team points in certain competitions that really do matter. Like right now, Team USA and also I'm sure Canada's weightlifting team are ramping up for the Olympics. This is the last real push before Tokyo next year. But at the same time, as a training sport, like you're training against yourself. The lifts are, you're thinking about whatever cues you and your coach have for yourself for that day. You kind of set your mindset up for what's ahead of you. And it kind of tells you a lot. There are some days where you walk into the gym and everything hurts and you feel like you're going to die, especially those first few squats in the morning. And there are other days where you feel like you're going to run through a wall and you're amped and you're just ready to go. And your coffee was perfect that morning, and that's a day to set you up for some PRs. But the ebb and flow of it is just, it's a beautiful thing that kind of tells you a little bit about your mental stature, and I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't do weightlifting, but I've found that just training with barbells, like powerlifting type stuff, has really helped me with my mindset, because every day you're kind of going in with a different level of gas in the tank. And it's kind of like it helps you kind of gauge like where you're at on a day, you know, and you see how all these kind of factors influence how you're feeling for like training and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Oh,
for sure. And that's been recently one of my interests in just kind of like understanding some research literature. We talk about it in the rehab setting, like what are these influences? What are these context factors for pain? They're very similar parallels to like, what are these contextual factors for training? So how do we have metrics to kind of understand what's going on in between your ears, as well as what you're feeling physically? Like, how are we adapting to the stresses that we're putting in, whether they are social, whether they are mental, you know, all those things come together. We're not an organism that just kind of lives in a bubble. We interact with the environment. And so they all have, you know, roles to play in the things that we do.
Yeah, and I know you touched on like beliefs and perspectives in like a blog that you wrote on your website, kind of talking about how important like mindset, self-awareness is, communication, and not only for like obviously for everyone, right? Like all humans, but like you talked about athletes, students, and even as clinicians in the profession. So like why do you think that's so important? Just overall for our development as humans, and like translating into like the profession.
Yeah. Your mindset, I mean, the cliches that we hear all the time, like your attitude determines your altitude. You know, we are self-fulfilling prophecies in a lot of ways too. So if we mentally have this perspective that negative things are going to happen, this kind of fixed mindset, in the, you know, words of Carol Dweck, the way that we approach challenges, the way that we approach difficulties is handled, you know, maybe not in the positive light. Like, we don't look at it as something to grow us. You know, contrastingly, if we look at the growth mindset, we're looking at ways we see challenges as, you know, opportunities. We see challenges as hurdles to go over, not to walk around. And so I think there's something to be said that like the process of learning and growing yourself, like being uncomfortable and like learning something from that moment of discomfort and being able to apply that later on, I think it helps improve the human experience as best we can.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think like as we sit here and talk about growth mindset, as you're rocking that dope level up swag, we're going to drop a little plug for the level up.
Gotta show them some love. Absolutely.
Yes, show them some love, get some swag. They're putting out some dope stuff. But yeah, with that growth, me and Will were talking about this the other day about like the growth mindset in the sense like once you take that approach and you start implementing it, it's crazy like how the law of attraction works, and you start to just bring more and more people that have that same mindset together, and like good things just start happening. Like it's kind of hard to explain in like whatever you want to believe in, like, but like that's real. So I think like once people just change their mindset to like having like a growth positive mindset and seeing challenges as a way to continue to like push themselves, and they start taking those steps, like it just like compounds into multiple like good things.
Oh yeah. The other thing too is like we don't. I like how in Dr. Dweck's book, she talks about how like not everybody has growth mindset in all aspects of their life, and just having that honest conversation with yourself of like, okay, you know, in this area of my life, I feel like I'm looking forward to this growth. I'm looking forward to challenging myself. In other parts of my life, I may not be ready for that. And that's where I think our other influences, like hopefully we are surrounded by positive influences that help guide us, you know, to be, you know, whatever that potential is. But, you know, not everybody has growth mindset all the time, and that's okay. Like there's always room to kind of reflect and evaluate yourself. Like, where am I at?
Yeah, I think that's something I've done a lot more the last year that not that I never did it, but I didn't do it as like cognizantly, is actually reflecting, you know, and like reflecting upon like how you've responded to situations, or, you know, maybe I could have approached this a little bit differently, or I reacted a little bit too emotionally to this situation. I feel like that reflection piece is actually a huge component of having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
It's so crucial, like, especially as, young clinicians or young people to a field, like that. I was talking to a mentor of mine. They were just saying, like, you can learn so much in a book, but like you have to kind of struggle and go through a few things. And if you have those moments of reflection, whenever you go through those difficult times where like, I probably botched that eval, or I probably could have said that differently to this person, reflect on it and use it as a moment. It's one, to give yourself some grace, but two, to kind of look at the next time this conversation or this interaction happens, like, I want to improve and do better. Like, I want to change this, hopefully for the better. So, screw ups don't have to be something that is a detriment to your character. It's part of just figuring stuff out.
I think this kind of like actually seeps into like the clinical realm a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was looking through your kind of like stories, and I noticed you talked about this one paper where we were discussing the idea behind like thinking about alternatives of like why your treatments could work and stuff. And I think that's like a reflection piece. Like, so do you actually do that? Like, think about, what are some reasons why my treatment could have been effective for this person?
Sure. In many ways, I'm a very simple person when it comes to treatments. Like, I want my person to be as an active player in the conversation or the interaction as possible. So in many ways, I tell my patients, like, within the first couple of visits, I'm just Mrs. Frizzle driving the magic school bus. You are part of this. You're interacting with this, ask questions, laugh, screw up, whatever. But like, this is a journey where we figure this stuff out. And so that it kind of takes the pressure off of me to say, like, I'm not the one fixing you, you're fixing you. So if there are moments where we kind of overdo things, like I have patients that come in and say like, oh, I really overdid it on my exercise. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. We know this is your threshold for now. This is what we can do here and today. And this is what we can learn from it. And it's an easy way, or not, I wouldn't say easy, but just a very practical way to reframe where your people are and guide them where they need to be or where they are at this moment.
Yeah, I got a question for you on that topic. And it was kind of what we just talked about maybe not being ready to adopt the growth mindset in like certain aspects of your life. Like, I'm sure you've dealt with it where people come in and they're not ready to take on that approach. So like, how do you kind of navigate that? Is there certain things that you do, maybe asking them questions that can lead them to seeing why they might need to take that approach, or like kind of how do you go about that?
I try to ask a lot of questions of them. I want them to, theoretically speaking, I want the person to kind of engage, like, why do I have this thought towards like my pain, or why do I have this thought towards of why I can't do this activity? And so they can kind of suss out, like, is this something that's legit? Like, is this like a legitimate fear? Is this something like I had a really traumatic experience to it? Or it's just like, I'm not sure because I haven't tried it in forever. And usually once you kind of tease out their why, if they're ready for it, if they're not going to open up, then I'm like, hey, look, maybe this isn't the best tool or the best treatment for you at this point. And that's fine. Reflect on a couple things, try and give them something actionable for them to take with them. And, the willingness to change is a spectrum. So if they're not in that place where like, we're ready for change, I'm like, hey, it's not the time, and that's okay. A fair amount of the clientele that we see in Sweet Home, especially, it's very underserved. There's a lot of chronic pain, a lot of opioid abuse in this area. So as challenging as it has been for me as like a new grad to be in this realm, it's taught me a lot about just meeting people where they are, and trying to give them something that matters to them. Like, we talk all the time about research literature, we have to do these specific things as treatments or this kind of, clinical practice guideline or whatever the case may be. And that's not always the best for them. Like, you need to give them an actionable point of reference from where they are. And it may not be, 3 sets of 15 on the yellow TheraBand. It might be like, hey, when was the last time you did something fun for yourself? Like, having them engage that and having them be okay with that.
Yeah, that's such a good point, man. It's easy to lose sight on that sometimes. Like, when you're like, I'm trying to kind of think back of like some of the people that I've seen over the last little bit, and like just given like let's just say like, I'm very much like education, exercise, like behavior modification, like that kind of stuff. But then sometimes you try to push that on people, like without really sitting and thinking like, okay, maybe that's not what they need like right now. Like you're saying, maybe like all they need is like some permission to go and do an activity that they haven't done in a long time. And like, it doesn't really matter if you get them doing like a deadlift in the clinic, you know?
Yeah. I have a patient I just discharged this week. She came in here with like persistent shoulder pain from some strain. I think she and her family like to go do a lot of mountain biking and snow activities. So they've been traveling all over the place. Kind of hurt her shoulder back in November. Didn't really see anybody about it. Wasn't really sure what to do about it. So she comes into me after, having a lot of conversations with her doctor and other people. And like, I don't know what it feels like. It's getting worse. I'm not sure if it's getting better. And so there's a lot of avoidance. The first day we moved the arm as much as we could. And I'm like, okay, go do stuff. Just whatever you enjoy doing, go try it out, see what happens. She came back to me the next week. She said, like, we went out mountain biking. I obviously didn't do the hard trails like I used to, but it just felt good to be myself again. I'm like, there's your therapy. We work on some shoulder strengthening. If it helps you, this is for something for long-term management, keeps you active. But here you go. Like, go be a human again. And she was very, very grateful for it.
I think, like, sometimes, like, kind of what you're talking about there is almost like giving them control over their own, like they can give themselves permission to go and try things, like, hey, there's very low likelihood of this actually being catastrophic. I think sometimes we set boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
These boundaries can actually be really restrictive.
Right. And this is why I think clinician language and patient language is so important. Like a lot of the people who have influenced me as a clinician, like the Derek Miles, the Michael Rays, the Adrian Laus, Greg Lehman, all those kind of people, like language in narratives are so important. So when we put out, this mindset of, proper movement is the only way to go. Bad form leads to injury. Like all these things, like we're dichotomizing, human life in a lot of ways, which in certain contexts, like if you're looking at, I need to improve my deadlift technique, I need to improve my squat technique. Sure. We can modify factors to improve a performance output. But when your output is just making sure that you can get off the toilet and not feel like a total piece of trash, like you might need to simplify some things, and that's okay. It may not look like the prettiest squat form ever, and that's fine, but it's still functional to that person.
Yeah, and this leads into the thing that I want to talk to you about. Again, another blog that you wrote, like Anti-Fragile, like part 1, and like I know you were talking a lot about the weightlifting community, but I think this translates to everyone. We get caught up in this thing of like going on, let's just say social media or wherever, and you're seeing like, oh, this is the perfect way to do that, and this is the perfect way to do this, and you blah, 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 when everyone's so individualized. And like you're saying, some people are going to move different than other people. And then you left it off with like a little quote that I thought was like, or you said like, we're fostering a community of physically fit and mentally fragile athletes. And that's something I kind of want to talk about because I think it's very common in the athletic population where you see these people who are so like they're physical specimens, and then here they are like worried that like their left glute isn't firing enough. That's not going to allow them to do this. And it's just like, or they're so concerned about like these little different things that might not necessarily be that big of an impact on their overall like performance or even like their pain experience or whatever you want to talk about. So I thought that was like huge.
Yeah. Funny enough, that article it started off as a rant. I was very upset by something I saw on social media. I'm like, I've got to put this out. And so I had to put some thoughts on paper. Fortunately, my wife is way smarter than I am at times and kind of helped me scale back and be like, hey, you can't rant at everybody. You need to let's have some grace for some people. So I have the wonderful opportunity to volunteer with USA Weightlifting on their medical team. And so I got to do junior nationals up in Spokane last year. And it's cool. Like, this is the future of the sport, which gets me really excited. But I have these coaches come bring me their athletes, the day of competition, and they want their back popped, or they want, some sort of kind of passive modality. And I'm like, why? I want to ask the question, like, what is the thought process as to why are we doing this here now? And then, we have those that are just like, I felt like it's a little tight today. I just need to kind of move real quick, send them on the way. In most circumstances where it's just like you can tell that their belief is not in actually the hands-on treatment, they just feel something and they want to perform their best. I'm kind of like, all right, if you need to be ready for the platform, there are ways to go about it. Whatever. But I use it as an opportunity to like engage the conversation of, what are your beliefs about your training? What are your beliefs about this treatment? What your warm up, whatever the case may be. And so that's been a question I've been really trying to wrestle with, and I want to learn more about is how can we foster physically prepared people, mentally prepared people, which is why I loved doing the series with Steph recently about, psychological readiness for return to sport. And there are so many influences on that. I think social media and popular media are a big influencer as to why we even have a lot of this high incidence of surgeries or this high incidence use of like different, treatment modalities. Like the foam roller was absolutely nothing probably about 10 years ago. And now it's on every single professional athlete's, training bag and stuff like that. And people see that and they think like, oh, I need this too. I'm like, why? What makes you the same as LeBron James? What makes you the same as Giannis Antetokounmpo? Like, I think we need to have this realistic expectation of what is the goal for me, for the thing that's in front of me, and why am I seeking these treatments? And when you ask that question honestly, and you kind of peel back the layers on why, I think there's a lot of stuff that we do just because we see it, and we expect that outcome on us. We expect that complexity to mean more, like give us more value or give us more of something, when in essence, it may not be the best thing for you. And that complexity is just extra.
And that mindset shift is unbelievably empowering. Like even, I'll be honest, a couple of years ago, I was very much that type of person. I remember specifically being so worried about whether or not my scapula was upwardly rotating while I was pressing. And I'm not even kidding. Like it sounds so silly when I think about it now. And I remember Dalton literally looked at me and he's like, just press the weight over your head. And I was like, all right. And I did it and it felt fine. And I've had this mindset shift since then. And at that point, I set all these boundaries on myself, like, oh, I'm only going to lift this much because like that's what's safe to me or whatever. And once I crossed that chasm and I got to this point where I'm at now, like it is insane how much more confident and how much better I feel training and working out. That's just from a case perspective, a personal story, but it goes to show you how important that is.
Yeah, I'm a case study of my own too. I was told right as I first, like I was leaving CrossFit, kind of started to get into weightlifting a little bit more seriously. I was having severe hip pain, both hips. I went and had MRIs done and had a couple of surgical consults, which as a PT student going to a surgeon, that was weird as it is, but we'll pass that. Both surgeons said I should never squat or deadlift again because my hips were so jacked. And I was just like, it was soul crushing in a lot of ways. And I'm like, why? I really questioned it. Like before that, prior to that, like my best pull was right around 575. My best back squat was in the high 4s, low 5s. So like I've done pretty well on two essentially crappy hips. Like,
It's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. So I really had like to wrestle with this. And so fortunately, like I was pointed in the direction of Quinn. I met Quinn Hinnick at a weightlifting clinic, and we talked about just like drilling positions and like just being patient and letting the actual movement, letting the actual lift be as much of a mobility thing as possible. So it took me 2 years of humbling myself, being patient with the process, and like I've self-rehabbed my own squat technique. I did a 230 kilo back squat in November of last year, pain-free. It's the heaviest back squat I've ever attempted. It felt awesome. And I'm still like improving like the efficiency of the movement and the efficiency as a weightlifter. So I think sometimes it's this, we're in such a weird era of like, we want everything now, like this instant gratification. Having access to information is awesome, but like there's this expectation of I've got to make this major fix in a snap. And that's not what happens. Like tissue change takes years. And that's an okay thing. Like you might get some symptom changes, earlier on, but like for you to really see lasting changes, it takes time, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's like the tissue change, but also like the tolerance. Like I know Dalton's had some trouble with his hip too. And I think understanding maybe that every time his hip hurt didn't mean that you're damaging it further, allows you to be a little more patient and just understand, okay, this just might take some time to kind of like for your nervous system to be okay with this movement again, and that you can dip into it a little bit, and that's not going to be catastrophic for your hip.
Yeah,
Exactly.
For sure. It's like for me, it's like I see people. So I work at a gym as well as like a coach, and like I see some of these people that like talk about some of the injuries they're going through and stuff. It just motivates me to like push exactly what you just talked about on them, because everyone is just like looking for like a really quick fix. Like, how is this going to get better? But like, it's not like that. You know, we all know that. So it's like in trying to get them to understand that. And once people do understand that, I think it gave me freedom to be like, okay, I don't have to completely stop doing this. Like, I don't have to stop squatting, but like I need to make a change to be able to get back to that, but I can keep doing it in different ways. You know what I mean? So like, I think it's important, because I think people either go, okay, I'm not going to do it at all, or screw it, I'm just going to keep going until it just goes away. And I think the important part is to help people find that like middle ground of like gradually getting there over time. And it's going to take some time, and you're going to have ups and downs, but that's just all part of the process. And I don't think sometimes people don't realize that. So it's important, I think, for people to understand.
Sure. And I think, you know, we in the gym see people, you know, they'll do some elaborate warm up or some elaborate use of their whatever passive modality for the day. That's fine. You know, if people understand that this is just one very small piece in this one small point in time, it's a very small data point. Over time, you want to see the overall trend upwards, but there's going to be some hills and valleys and like some spikes and troughs in that too. That's okay. If you're going to use these implements, if you're going to use these tools, understand their purpose, understand what they are and what they aren't. And I think that's such a powerful tool for people to say like, yeah, I like my foam roller ahead of time. There's a comfort there, whatever. But I do 2-3 minutes on it. I'm going into my warm up. I'm going into whatever my workout is, and I'm prepared mentally as well as physically.
Yeah.
I like my foam roller as a travel pillow.
It's a solid travel pillow. Yeah.
On that note, though, I think like I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Trying to navigate or educate people that have that mindset around some of those passive modalities, to maybe reshift their narratives around it. Like, how do you kind of go about that, especially if people are very attached to it? And I think in the athletic community, like that happens, right? Like that's part of their routine and like all of those things. So navigating that can be a little challenging.
Yeah. I try to educate them honestly. Like we are so blessed with like a plethora of research, good, bad, or otherwise, but like you can engage the conversation like, well, we're learning right now that, so let's take the foam roller, for example. We're not seeing it change specific, you know, tissue structure or tissue length. We're learning that there's more of a sensory component to it too. So like your body as an organism has a lot of sensory inputs that it's trying to process. So if your foam roller makes you feel like you can get into, you know, a better overhead position or a better squat, like that's fine, but it's probably more of a nervous system change rather than like you're lengthening your IT band or anything ridiculous like that. You know what I mean? Like give them an alternative to kind of frame it around as best you can, or just be honest, just tell them like it may work for you, but this is what we know from like proven and like studied scientific principles. Like these, you can't outwit, you know, gravity, obviously. You can't outwit physiology. Like these are the things that trump whatever we're doing. So just having that understanding, like these are the things that kind of are the parameters in which we work within. The other implements, the other ways that we train should fit within that and should make sense with that. Like that's what research and science should be. It's like not really to prove myself more right. It's really to make ourselves less wrong. Like make sure that we're supporting the things that matter the most.
Mm-hmm. And I think as long as it's not taking away from like other things that can be optimal for them to prepare for that sport, I think, because like, you know, if people are like foam rolling for like 45 minutes trying to like, you know, it's like, where can our time be spent better to optimize your preparation for performance, right?
Yeah. And getting them to say that like, let's change your warm up. And yeah, it's going to take some time for you to feel the same way that you did before, but this is going to yield so much better things later on. Like just kind of give them, instead of just taking something away from them completely, give them something else to do. Like as gym goers and, you know, athletes as ourselves, we like to do stuff. So sometimes when you take away, like you're taking away their comfort, you got to give them something else to kind of replace it.
Yeah.
And there's some utility in that. Like you will get so much more out of this, especially long term, because this is what really will drive a more lasting change.
It's so interesting though, because it's almost like as a society, we value complicated solutions, you know?
Yeah.
And I even catch myself doing that. And you kind of caught me on it yesterday on our Instagram page, you know, where like, it wasn't like I gave like a super complicated response, but it could have been simpler. And it was basically your idea of like, you know, your best mobility technique is the movement itself, right? In that case, it was a front squat. But I think that's a really good point. You know, like we need to value and express how important just keeping things simple like that.
And simple in the manner that we understand why it can be simple. I think if we just give like blanket simple exercises to people, you know, there is some loss and some disconnect. So like be intentional with your understanding of what you're trying to do, be intentional with your reasoning, but you don't have to make it super elaborate. The reason why I even commented on the front squat one is because my front rack sucks, and my best mobility tool is doing some heavy front rack holds and just hoping to God that it doesn't crush my spine. But I mean, over time, it's really helped it improve. It's slow and it's boring. It's not sexy, but it's effective. And that's good. Like if your goal is to get better, like why don't do things that actually help you get better? Like for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting though, because I've done that exact same thing with a client before. I was like, you know, we need to spend more time in the front rack position and stuff. And some people are almost like, that's it. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh, well, yep.
I don't know if you guys saw Jared Boyd's IG story about complexity and complexity in human. Oh man, I wish I would have screenshot all of those. But like that conversation where we as humans we love complexity because we think complexity equals value, and that's not true. Like your education, like your words, your reassurance are just as valuable as any treatment modality, any exercise, or anything else that we do, and that's awesome. Like that's why I think like human interaction and connection is so cool. Is like you guys encouraging with an Instagram post to some athlete or some person who's having just a really crap day, them seeing that later on, be like, you know what? I've gone through this. My life is still okay. I still have breath in my lungs. I've got food in the fridge or whatever the case may be. Like it's going to be all right. Today I might have taken the L, but tomorrow's a new day. Yes. And so sometimes just simple reminders like that can go a long way.
Yeah, and people really appreciate. I found like that simplicity. Like if they've been like constantly told like all of these things that are so complex and like how am I ever going to be able to do all this? Like, and then you come in and you get someone that's just going to listen to them, listen to what they want to get back to, giving them simple steps and educating them and giving context around why that's going to work. Like people really, really do appreciate that, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, you guys are, as coaches in the gym too, like you can't give an athlete like 10,000 cues. Their brain will explode. Like you've seen that look on their face where like, I'm literally a deer in the headlights right now. This is way too much going on. You got to give them something. Just give them one or two things. Like, all right, for today, your goal is to master this part of the skill. Which is why I love weightlifting. Like the snatch is one of the most technical movements that you'll ever do. And there's so many things you can focus on at all times, but I love getting the light bulb to at least flicker for a second for somebody, just because like I understand that this is what the lift is supposed to feel like. And then you chase after it like a unicorn for like the next 5 years of your life for you to actually find that perfect snatch. Once you felt it once and you're like, I need to do this again, it doesn't happen for a while. And that's why I think we love it. We just keep going back to the barbell, go back into the dungeon and just keep searching for it.
It's so funny because as you were talking about that, I just realized I had a case where I was kind of like, I was helping someone with like a rotator cuff tendinopathy. And we were going through the exercises, going well and stuff. And I was just going on and on about like progressions and stuff like that. And I looked at him and I realized in that moment, I'm like, I am spit firing way too much information right now. And I was like, don't worry. We're just going to stop right there.
Yeah.
And, we were laughing about it because I think he realized too.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
But I think also in that moment, like that person probably saw your passion and that you really care about this stuff and really want to share so much for them. Like, I have this gift. I want to give it to you. I'm excited about it. And I want you to be excited about it too. Yeah. But give it to them in stages. Like, just like a good TV show, you got to leave a little bit of a cliffhanger, a little tease.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
Get them coming back for more.
Come back to me.
What's up next for you? You got any big plans with the business, with social, with your coaching?
So I have a couple projects that are kind of coming off the ground. I'm going to do a mindset series with a close friend of mine. He's a personal trainer in Abilene and a former Marine or a retired Marine. So we're going to work on some mindset stuff, how it applies in rehab, how it applies in like a training and fitness lifestyle. For me personally, I'm getting back on the competition platform, which is great. I have
Let's
a meet.
go.
Yeah, I got a meet in 3 weeks, so it's crushing my soul, which is great. So I have a meet at the end of the month. I have a meet in April, and I'll be volunteering a little bit more with USA Weightlifting. I'll be at the IWF Youth World Championships in Vegas, so that'll be a lot of fun. Get to see some amazing young talent from all over the world, and hopefully one day I'll be able to do more international trips with USA Weightlifting, maybe Tokyo, maybe Paris, maybe Pan Am's, in the years to come. That's a goal and a passion of mine. Like I would love to be like the weightlifter's PT, in some sort of way. That's the ultimate goal of mine. So that's coming down the pipe.
Maybe Canada.
Oh, I'd love to come to Canada. They're funny enough, I think Masters Worlds are in Toronto actually later this year. So, and we have a couple lifters in our community that are phenomenal masters lifters. And I think a few of them are trying to make the trip. So I might have to bug one of them to slip me into their carry-on bag and be like, let's go.
Yo, let us know if you get in that carry-on bag.
Yeah, I will for sure.
We'll be down in Toronto. We'll meet you.
We're
Sounds good.
Just don't ask me to do a snatch.
I will have to. I have to know.
Is there anything else you want to touch on, man? You want to let the people know? Go ahead. If not, you can just kind of leave where people can find you, learn more about you.
I think we covered a lot, gents. Like this was a ton of fun. Yeah. We'll have to do this again. The big thing, I guess, the big takeaway is for whoever the people are that are listening to this, if you're a new grad, like enjoy the process. Learn how to fail well, like fail safely, and that's okay. For the people who are the consumers, the clients, the patients, ask questions, like be as engaged in the process as possible so you can make it work well for you. Those are the biggest things and biggest takeaways that have been implored on me. So I like to always just share that for everybody else. For those who care and want to kind of follow along, my Instagram for the business is the Human Movement Rehab. I don't post nearly as consistently as you guys. I'm kind of a slacker in that regard, but I try to get some research up there, some ideas about mindset and training. And maybe eventually I'll do some exercise videos. There are too many smart people already doing great exercise videos. So I like to repost good stuff like that.
I want some power cleans, man.
Okay. We might get some power cleans on there. We'll see. And then my personal one is at DJ House Brother. If you care about seeing pictures of my dog and my lovely wife and just our adventures. So that's who we are. Come say what's up.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Josh, thanks so much for coming on. Honestly, guys, go over and follow his page. He's putting out good stuff. That series you just did with Steph was on point, and like all around, man, we just really appreciate you. We need more people like you in the community. So it's awesome to finally get to sit down and talk to you.
Thank you guys so much for the things that you guys are doing. Keep grinding. That coffee is going to be dope. I cannot wait. But seriously, keep encouraging others. Keep doing the stuff that you are doing. It is much needed and very, very much appreciated.
Yes, sir. Sweet, Josh. Thanks for coming on, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Yeah.